everyone. Welcome to Canvas Time-Saving Features and Shortcuts. My name is Laura, and I'm a senior instructional designer with Citi. I know most of you, but it's always good to reintroduce myself for those of you that don't know or who are listening to the recording. Daniel, do you want to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Sure thing. My name's Daniel Martin. I'm an instructional technologist with Citi, and Laura and I are really happy to be seeing you all today to talk about some ways that you can take some of the load off, if you will, with Canvas.
That's a good description of it. Appreciate that. So we're doing this workshop in part based on feedback we got from you all in Citi's annual survey. You shared with us that you're looking for ways to save time when building and facilitating your courses in Canvas. We know you're busy faculty, and even a little time saved on teaching tasks goes a long way. So we prepared slides for this. However, much of our time will be spent in our Canvas workshop demo site, showing you some of these time-saving techniques. This workshop is being recorded and shared, so please feel free to unmute, ask questions, throw your questions in the chat, and one of us will be monitoring that and responding. Okay, so workshop format. For the purposes of framing this discussion, we are dividing the workshop into 3 parts, all pertaining to Canvas time savers. So first, we're going to be discussing, I'll be discussing time-saving techniques when you're preparing your course to teach. So things that you're doing to set up your course and get it going, and also in between terms. Then Daniel's going to be picking it up from there and talking about ways to save time while your course is running and facilitating your course in Canvas. And lastly, new to us, AI enhancements in Canvas that will help you save time. And I believe, and Daniel will probably elaborate on this and correct me if I'm wrong, some of these topics are going to overlap, right? You know, AI enhancements will definitely inform how you teach and save you time while the course is in session, etc. Okay, so getting ready to teach. So there are a number of ways you can save time in Canvas in the process of setting up your course. And we're going to divide this section into 3 parts. As you can see here, the course copy, selection, and editing process. Enabling feature options, which I know some faculty use, but it may be an underutilized feature of Canvas. And then lastly, setting up your gradebook. So now each of these subtopics contains more information than we're going to cover in this workshop. So today we'll only be covering tools in those categories that can help us save time. So getting ready to teach, here are the 3 parts and elaborating a bit on that. We have number 1, course copy, selection, and editing features. We'll look at selecting specific content only for your course copy, adjusting events and due dates, batch editing, assignment due dates, setting discussion checkpoints, which is a new feature, and using unpublished pages for course management. We'll briefly talk about that. Then, as I mentioned, enabling feature options. We'll take a closer look at 2 of those feature options that are time savers, preserving your group set during assignment or discussion copy, and YouTube to Studio content migration, which is a very new feature option that hopefully all of you will be excited about. And then finally, setting up your gradebook. So now I'm going to go over to the course site. Hopefully, can you see this, or do I need to stop share and share my Canvas page here? Let's try this. Okay, I am going to, where can I, again, I'm having, now I can't see my share. Can you see my screen or no?
No.
I'm just seeing you right now.
Oh, here we go. Sorry, I was just missing it. All right. so let's go back to sharing. All right, hopefully you can see my Canvas homepage now.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Let me just get a couple things here. I'm sorry, guys, I'm having some issues with one of my documents here, which is okay, let's just get started. Okay, so there are a number of things you can do in the course copy process to speed it up. So I know that many of you use this import existing content button or work with a instructional designer to help you import course content each term. We're going to start there. We're going to go click on import existing content. This is a typical process when importing a course into an empty course shell each term. I know that many of us, let me just pull up a course to import. Let's just pretend we're going to import a duplicate of this course. We have this here. So I know that many of us just default to the all content setting, which is the default mode on the import process. However, there are a couple of things you can do to help speed up your course copy process. For example, if we select specific content here and add it to our import queue, don't worry, it's not going to start importing until we select something to import. We see that we have the option now to select content and not import everything. Some of you may already do this. Some of this may be new to some of you. In this case, I select content for import. We have the option of including all or excluding things that we may not want to bring over. And this can be a time saver because maybe we have a bunch of announcements that are specific to the last term and we don't want to roll them over each time. We can copy everything but the announcements, or we can select specific announcements we want to roll over, maybe weekly and weekly welcomes, that sort of thing, and leave the others behind. These announcements, of course, anything is going to remain in the course from which you're copying. So it's not like you're going to lose anything in the process of bringing it over if you decide to exclude content. That, that will save the time of having to do a bunch of deletes after the course copy process completes. And then there's another thing here, which, again, let me bring up my course. Adjusting events and due dates. You have a couple of options here, right? Instead of just rolling it over with everything intact, you can make adjustments prior to the import. You can click on this box that says adjust events and due dates, and you can shift your dates. This is especially useful if, say, you know that things are going to stay pretty consistent from term to term. You're going to have discussion posts due on a Thursday of week 5, that sort of thing. It's going to be the same assignment. In that case, shifting dates is your new best friend. All you have to do is enter your start date, enter your end date and time. You can even click a substitution if you like. Say you want to move discussion post date from Thursday to Friday or something like that. You can do a substitution or shift, and then Canvas will do all of that work for you, just shifting it over. Of course, I would recommend that you review that after that happens to be sure everything was set up accordingly. But if in fact you don't anticipate a lot of changes, this is a great tool to help you make those changes automatically on the back end so that you don't have to click a bunch of buttons to adjust dates. And lastly, if you want to remove dates entirely, you can do that. So say you don't want old dates to come over, you can just copy the content and move it over that way. So you have options. It's not just this default setting you have to use, but these are, these can save you an hour of your time following the course import process during that course copy process. Any questions about that one? I know I'm sort of speeding through each of these parts, but just a little bit of more information about the course copy process and how you can help facilitate that more easily. If no questions, we're going to go jump over to assignment. So transferring quizzes, great question, Barbara. Could you elaborate on that? What would you like to do? If you want to unmute, please feel free. Are you wanting to like exclude quizzes from your course copy process?
No,
or...
this has to do with something, and Daniel knows about this, that happened
Okay.
to a course of mine this past week, I think it was, with a quiz that it didn't copy over correctly from the past semester, and that apparently there sometimes are problems with that, with transferring quizzes over.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Go ahead.
Sure. What Barbara's referring to is that there's a third-party tool, Respondus, which a lot of us use, that provides sort of remote proctoring for asynchronous exams. And it was really the first time we've encountered this before, but Barbara's course had an exam last week, maybe the beginning of this week. It's a blur. And a couple of students started the exam and were not required to go through Respondus, which is how Respondus works. You have to go through it. And at a certain point, an hour or so later, the balance of students, when they would go to take the exam, were in Respondus. And it was a strange situation. So in talking with the vendor, they said that there is a bug that sometimes when exams are copied over from a previous term, their association with Respondus is broken. And I had never encountered that before, so it was like, oh. So as far as like advice is to, when you copy a course, if you know that there are Respondus exams which you intend to use with Respondus, it's probably prudent to go through each one of those exams and disassociate them from Respondus and then reassociate them with Respondus, because they may show that they are associated with Respondus, but in fact, they're not. I hesitate to say that this is one example, and maybe it was just an edge case, but it's probably a good idea to do that anyway, to go through and just again disassociate and then reassociate those exams with Respondus.
So Daniel, you're suggesting prior to the import process, any Respondus quizzes? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, post-import, after you've imported into the new course.
Oh, okay.
That's a recommendation coming from me. That's probably the one thing that happened with Barbara's exam, is that I did at one point disassociate and reassociate the exam. Whether or not that actually created the successful access for the subsequent students to get in, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But yeah.
So not really a time saver per se, but
yeah.
still a solution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Karen, do you have a question?
Yeah. One of the things I see is if I pull content from a prior semester into the next semester that I'm putting together, I'm finding that there's less and less content in the developing core that matches what I'm currently doing. Is there a way to click it so that it automatically goes back to that developing core so that it has the most current stuff?
By developing core, could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
I have access to the DEV colon NSG 612.
Okay.
And that's the main core that contains everything from the beginning. But now the content in there is in the modules is old. And so we always in the beginning were pulling from that place for the next semester. But now we're at the point where we're always pulling from the prior semester. So it's that DEV one that is almost irrelevant now.
Mm,
But it concerns me because if something ever happens to me, that's where that new course director would have access to that course.
okay. So
And
what you
it would
could,
be
I'm
all
sorry, go ahead.
old stuff.
Yeah. So what you could do, not exactly a time saver, but what you could do is just reset that old development shell and copy into it the most, unless you want to maintain that history, or create a new dev shell that is reflective of your most recent course, that is your updated course, so that you have a carbon copy or blueprint, so to speak, of your current course that is the most current. And from that, you can, declare that your definitive course, that, if something were to happen to your current course or to any faculty, that could be the course that future instructors could pull from. It doesn't really, I mean, I know faculty do both. They copy from the dev shell into their current shell. Sometimes they just roll over for that exact reason, the current term into the next one, because it is the most, I do the same thing on my end in my teaching, roll over the last term, because that's where I keep my most current content and updates. So it depends on your working process. Again, not really a time saver, but we always recommend that if you're going to have a dev shell, to try to keep it maintained, right? Clean it up, organize all that content on the back end, so you don't find yourself overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff that's no longer relevant to your course. And then you have to sift through like stacks of paper in your office,
Okay, thank you.
Does that help? Yep. No problem. So thanks, that's excellent questions. Please keep them coming. Now we're going to talk about assignments and a couple of things you can do to hasten your workflow with assignments. We're on our assignments page of our demo course, and you see here that I've got 3 placeholder assignments and a sample discussion, which we'll look at in a moment. So I know that many of us probably click into each individual assignment, open it up, adjust the assign to fields, and then save it and then move on to the next assignment. There's actually a faster way for you to update assignment due dates if in fact you haven't used that shift to feature in the course copy process. And that's found under these 3 dots here. Click on edit assignment dates. When I edit assignment dates, I now see all my assignments on one page with the available from and due dates on the page. So I can either plug, type in those updated due dates, click into the calendar and add them here or adjust them here, and then just click the save button and they will all update at once. This is useful if you say have assignments that you don't have much content changing each term, right? The assignment directions remain the same. It's really just the due dates that you need to change. This is a quick way to do that. You also have access to a batch editing feature, which is this button right here, which essentially just means it's a way of shifting dates. So if I want to batch edit any of these or all of these assignments, I would click on them, click on this batch edit button, and it kind of does similar to the other course copy shift process, in that you can shift dates and assignment availability dates forward by a number of days, or you can remove dates. So this is a lesser known feature because it requires a few clicks to get to, but it is there for you should you know the exact number of days you want to enter. Hey, please keep your voices down. My apologies, my kids just got home from school, early dismissal. So you can insert any number of dates and move that forward. Another nifty feature, this is one of my new favorites. I'm going to introduce this before we wrap up this section and move over to Daniel's section. This is the discussion checkpoint feature. And in my opinion, the name doesn't really capture what it does well. But essentially well, first of all, how many of you use online discussions? And how many of you, quickly in the chat, do you set your due date to your initial post date or to your peer replies due date? Feel free to unmute or just throw your answer in the chat. Peer replies. Okay, Barbara said there's to her peer replies. Response, peer initial response. Okay. You know, as faculty, it's always a frustrating thing because we're always having to choose one or the other. And then inevitably we have students come to us and say, you know, I didn't see the peer replies on my calendar, so I missed it. And then, you know, we have to make allowances or not, whatever. Okay, great, Clayton. Peer replies, Karen says initial. So it's not a convenient solution. It's not an inclusive solution, right? And it's one that's caused me a lot of frustration too as faculty. So here comes an the sample or the checkpoint discussion, the checkpoint feature, which allows you to set 2 different due dates to your discussions, your initial post date and your peer replies. And you would do that simply by clicking this box that says assign graded checkpoints. When you do that, this page expands and you now see this option, your checkpoint settings. This allows you to assign points by reply, or allows you to set the additional replies or peer replies required and allocate points for that. You don't have to. You do have to do a minimum number of additional replies so that students see how many peer replies are required, at least 1. And then here's where you can set your topic due date and your peer replies due date. And once you'd say, I've entered a couple here, once you do that, I'm going to save and go back to my discussion. And if I click view as a student, what's really nifty is that students now can view the due dates if using discussion checkpoints here. It opens in this wonderful little tray, side tray, so you can see the due dates and the peer replies required and their dates. And then it also appears in their calendar and on their to-do list, so you don't have any more of those questions. Oh, I didn't see it. Can I still reply to discussion? And then it saves you time as a facilitator or as a grader, when you're in there, you don't have to scroll to find if they met the initial due date, if you've set the due date to the peer replies. So eliminates lots of confusion and just makes it, in my opinion, a lot easier for students and faculty to participate and keep up with all online discussions. I'm woefully behind. I'm not gonna, Daniel, how we doing? How much time do you think you need for yours?
I can definitely abbreviate some of it because I think it'll be better at staying within the scope of our presentation anyway. So we should be fine.
Right. I'm just going to try. I'm going to try to do this in a few minutes.
Sure.
And then pass it over to you. But I just do want to make a point of showing where those feature options are for faculty that want to use them. And then I want to jump really quickly over to the grading feature, or to the speed grader, to show one more thing. So feature options are additional settings or options, you know, essentially what it says that you can add to your course. You can opt in or leave it the opt-out default setting on. And they can be accessed through settings and this tab, which is called feature options. Very briefly, we're going to talk about these 2 things, which are preserve group set during assignment or discussion copy, and YouTube to Studio content migration, which is very new to our instance of Canvas. Essentially, preserve group set, hopefully this will delight many of you, is that now it's turned on at the default setting in our Canvas instance, is that when you copy a course that has a group set assigned to an assignment, like a discussion or an assignment, it will maintain that correlation between the assignment and the group set, say discussion groups, in the course copy process, so that you don't have to remember to go back into that discussion and assign it to that group set after the course copy completes. I know sometimes this is something, it's an easy thing to forget to do, and it can cause frustration because once students start posting to a discussion, you can't adjust those settings. You have to recreate the discussion and have them repost. In this case, it will preserve that group set. So all you have to do is just set up those groups, enroll the students in them, and that correlation will be maintained in the course copy process, which I think is a wonderful new addition. You can disable it though. If you don't want it, you don't have to use it. It pertains only to your course, this feature option. You don't have to keep it on. The YouTube to Studio content migration is like what it says it is. How many of you use YouTube videos in your course? Maybe you embed them on a page. If you were to use the YouTube to Studio content migration and turn it on in your feature options, and I'm wrapping up here, Daniel, my apologies. This link automatically becomes available in your menu. You can scan your course. Oh, I don't have anything with ads, but I do have a YouTube video here. And ideally, it should have found that. You can move it over to Studio, and it will do that automatically for you. And then you can make use of all the Studio features that, such as annotations and quizzing. And most importantly, you can eliminate distraction, which we know is a best practice. Students aren't bombarded with ads and such once the video is moved from YouTube to Canvas Studio. It keeps them, it maintains that sort of integrity of that course and keeps them in that learning environment, which is always a good thing. I'm gonna stop here for the sake of time. If we have time to go back, Daniel, into the grade book and take a look at the comment library, which I think is a wonderful time saver, we can do that. If not, we'll just leave it for another workshop. But I'm gonna pass the reins over to Daniel and let you pick up while your course is in session. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat and I will monitor that as Daniel is speaking.
Outstanding. All right. Let's see here. And we'll go to desktop too. All right. All right, so I'm going to be talking about things you can do while you're in session to kind of, again, make life a little easier. And we'll be talking about conditional messaging to your students, scheduling announcements, look a little bit at notification settings, which tend to be something that we sort of, maybe we monkey with it the first time we used Canvas and then we don't look at it ever again. Some rich text editor features, recovering and restoring content, and time permitting, we'll talk about the enhanced speed grader. I think that might be something we won't talk about though today. And we'll give you a little bit of a preview of some of the AI enhancements that are appearing now inside of Canvas. And by AI, I'm going to put those in air quotes. I don't know if I have my camera on, but just to say that this is something that we're not talking about AI as far as the world outside of our Canvas instance. It's more like being able to do things like understand natural language within your course and leverage some of those capabilities. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is conditional messaging. And this is a capability that came on within the last year within Canvas, and it gives you the ability through the gradebook to reach out to subsets of students within your course. So kind of jumping over here to an example. So what you would do is, for example, in this case, we have an evaluation assignment. And what we want to do is talk to, go ahead and send a message to students who received a certain grade above a certain level, for example. So here we've got the compose message. We selected option. I'll jump back really quickly, by the way. In the top right corner here is where you'll access this. So you have the assignment, you'll click there. and you'll get this option to see a message students who tool. All right. And then inside the compose message, you'll have this option for students who, and we open this up and we'll see there's what some of the options are in this case. And so you can see we're going to go ahead and select the option to speak with students who scored more than a certain level. In this case, we're going to say students who scored more than 19.5 on this example, on this assignment. And you'll see one of the things it'll do is it reports back to you and tells you how many students are in that particular group. I kind of like this for a couple of reasons, but the one that jumps out to me is sometimes we, especially if we're new to a tool, we make a selection, but maybe this number is telling us this is wildly divergent from the number of students that we were pretty sure we were communicating with. So that's going to give us a little clue that perhaps we selected the wrong item here, and so we want to double check that. So once you've got that there, you can go ahead and compose your message. And again, this sort of keeps you from having to, send individual messages to individual students with essentially the same content. All right, so let's you speed that up there. All right. And now the next thing I want to talk to you about is just scheduling announcements. And some of you may have already done this. Scheduling announcements has been a capability that's been in Canvas, for quite some time. And I'm sure some of us, or a lot of us, have already come to appreciate just what announcements can do in a class, especially again a large class. So it allows you to create announcements in advance, set dates to release those automatically. And one thing to remember about this is it's a time saver in the sense that it's keeping you from having to stay on top of these things throughout the semester. When we have our heads are clear as we're prepping the course, we had that sort of wherewithal to be able to do a little bit of an observation of what your needs are through the term. And one of those things is thinking about communication that you want to have with your students. So really, the examples of what this can do is you can do reminders to your students before an upcoming deadline, reminders to study in advance for a particular exam, provide guidance on prepping their technology. Something that's very present for us right now, as by way of example, is that we've taken on a new proctoring tool. And so everybody is getting used to using it, including your friendly support person here. But we know a recipe for disaster is if a student has not used a particular critical technology before the moment they actually need to use it for real. And so I find, for example, having students get reminded in advance, hey, go and check out that particular tool and do the sample exam that I've given you to do that, so that when the actual critical exam time comes up, they know that their technology is all in order and there's no surprises for them coming up. Something else to note too about announcements in general is that students who are using the mobile app, which quite a number of students at Rush do, in announcements that come up in your class are going to be push notifications that they get on their phones. And this is whether or not they've elected to accept text messages and things like that from Canvas. All right, so in this particular case, I've gone ahead and selected announcements, and in my course, let's see if this comes up. I have a feeling this is not looking correct. Oh, of course, it's not looking correct. So what I'm going to do is switch over to Canvas. I can do this live. All right, now everybody's seeing this course?
Yeah, I can see it, Daniel.
You can see it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to do a new announcement. I'll go ahead and hit add announcement. And I can put a title in it. All right. So I'm just going to help remind students in this case, be sure to reference the most recent lecture that we've given, because that information will be used in the exam. All right, great. And that's just your standard announcement. And if I didn't do anything at this point, I've never seen that before. Okay. I could just hit publish and it's going to appear in my course, full stop. But again, we're in that nice calm place of the late summer, early August. We're thinking about that course coming up and we want to be very prepared. So what we'll do is we know that exam is going to be given on October 13th. So I'm going to go ahead and remind students on October 9th that this is going to pop up and it'll come up at 12 a.m. To get this announcement. And I'll set it to stop being visible on October 13th at midnight. There we go. So now that uh, little notification is going to pop up for my students. I'll publish it, and they'll be getting that notification whenever they log in to the course. And the critical thing here too is to note that I set a date for that to appear and a date for it to go away. This is a hot tip from City, but one thing we really try to do is be pretty conservative with the announcements that we put out to Canvas, because we're hoping that in a world where we have newsletters and email messages and so on, that we tend to kind of filter out because it becomes background noise. We like the idea that we can keep Canvas announcements as something that's somewhat discrete, that only occurs a fixed number of times or a minimal number of times, so that students take notice of it. Hey, an announcement just appeared in my course. I better take note of it before I just clear it and move on with my life. So that's one of the things we want to talk about that. All right. Jump back over to okay, this one will be very quick. Notification settings. As I mentioned before, notification settings tend to be the kind of thing that we maybe look at initially and then don't do a lot with. If you are somebody that works with notifications a lot, you're a great person. But in any case, for notification settings, what you'll want to do is go in. This is actually something you'll access via your accounts. Again, these are notifications that you receive from Canvas when certain events occur. All right. And just really quickly, one of the things we want to talk about with customizing notification settings is we want to eliminate, just as I mentioned earlier about how there can be a lot of noise in our lives, right, of information. This is one place where you can trim that down a bit. So for example, some of the options that you see when you go into notification settings for your account, in fact, I'm going to jump over to mine so we can take a peek at it there. That's better. All right, so I'll go to account and I'll come down here to notifications. You see these various categories of items, of events that will trigger some kind of a notification. And you can see certainly in many cases, you can just turn that off. I'll just quickly go to due date here. If I click on that, I get some options. I can select to have no notifications at all. I can select having a weekly summary, notify immediately, or getting a daily summary. So again, just thinking about how one might use that, like with late grading or late submissions, you might say, instead of getting an immediate notification, maybe you do want to have just a daily summary of that, or a weekly summary. But in any case, I guess one of the things to point out here is that immediate notification. This is something that I do think falls into the category of you want to use it sparingly. So any one of these categories of items over here, if there's something you really want to know immediately, like perhaps a late submission from a student, then you go ahead and you make that something that receives an immediate notification. But you may even want to go through and just select some of these items and say, I really don't need to see in real time when that event has happened. I can either not receive any notification at all, or if there's an option to instead get some kind of a daily summary that I can at my leisure again review and see what's going on in that particular area, you can do that. Now these are account level settings. If you really have some time, you can also go in and change those settings on a course by course basis. And I'll be really honest with y'all, I didn't really know about that until I started working on this particular presentation and realized, oh, I could go in and do that. To me, that seems like that could potentially take a lot of time unless you really do have particular aspects of a given course that you do want to control notifications for. But I think for most of us, just getting a handle on our general notifications is pretty good. A distinction between account level notifications and course, really nothing different except that the course level notifications sort of supersede whatever settings you have inside of the account level. All right. All right. And the rich text editor, I am going to jump over into the real world again and show you the rich text editor. Now in the rich text editor, back over to our course. The rich text editor again is one of those things that there's been subtle changes over time that sometimes we just sort of lose track of and aren't aware of. So I'm going to jump into pages. I have a sample page set up here for us to look at. And the first thing I want to demonstrate is I have this sample document here on the brain. I worked a great deal of time on it. And I notice as I'm reviewing it, of course, it's just about to roll, that I have the brain, and then everywhere else I spelled the word as Brian, the human Brian. So what can I do about that? In the past, what you need to do is go through and read the thing and find every instance of the word brain, or maybe if you're particularly savvy, you might copy everything on this page, paste it into Word, and then use the find replace option in Word to fix that. But in this case, we now have a find and replace tool inside of Canvas. So I'll come in here and say find Brian and change Brian to brain. And you can see here when I selected find, it found all the examples of Brian. And I'll hit replace all. And now that's fixed. And granted, this is kind of like, hello, it's 2025. This is a feature that you kind of expect to be in a rich text editor, but it's great to have it there. Now, other improvements that you have include being able to make edits to images that are inside of it. One thing I want to show you really quick, though, because I think it's kind of cool, is the ability to bring this down here for us. There we go. All right, I've got this little page about the human brain. And let's say I wanted to, no. I like this particular image of the brain and I want to bring it into my page. The rich text editor in Canvas now supports drag and drop. So instead of, for example, having to upload that image into a folder, a file folder in your course, and then do an insert option here, you can just drag and drop that image. In this case, it's particularly cool because I actually dragged and dropped it from the web, but you can do this very same thing. If you already have those images saved on your locally, whether it's in a OneDrive or on your desktop or something like that, you can drag and drop and bring that in. All right. Another thing is if you're copying and pasting text, let's say, for example, you've copied from a Word document and brought that into your into a page inside of Canvas. Sometimes it'll occur as you'll get anomalies. I don't have a good example of a word copy paste here, but there's been enough times where I've seen a page in Canvas behave in strange ways. And one of the things you can do now is you can go ahead and select the option. You can select all the text in this document and then go to Format, and there's a clear formatting option there too. This is, again, particularly good at getting rid of anomalous, weird code that comes over when you're copying and pasting from another source. The accessibility checker is also something that's pretty timely right now, given that we're looking at a fairly short window to get our courses compliant with ADA requirements. But I just would really be remiss if I didn't point out the accessibility checker. And this is, in this particular case, the document's in pretty good stead, but it's just telling me the first heading on the page should be H2. Okay, I'll fix that. I'll tell it to change only the headings level, and there we go. And now it's fixed it. So again, this is another quick way, and believe me, we're all going to be hearing pretty soon about some other great tools we have for ADA compliance, but that's one quick way to be able to make changes. And of course, we'll save that. All right. And I'm going to go ahead now and quickly come over here, Rich Text Editor. That was my really great slides about, okay, recovering and restoring. All right, so we'll come back over to this real live course that we've got. And let's say I go ahead and I realize that I really liked an earlier iteration of this page. So one thing I can do is I can come in and view page history. So I've got this page here, and I can see, granted, this is a fairly young page and there's not a lot of changes that have made to it, but you may have a page that over time you realize that you made changes, you may have lost something, or maybe a version of a particular paragraph, you really liked that more. Going back and using the revision history gives you the ability to, number one, see what the previous iteration of a page looked like. And if you want to really jump back to that and make that the version of the page you want to work with, you'll just hit restore this revision. Also, but if there is content in here that you want to bring over, you can also do a copy. Go back to your current page, you know, edit, and paste that information in. So that's one way you can work to not just simply set the page back to its previous iteration, but grab something, if you will, from that previous iteration and bring it into the current course, the current page. Now let's say I delete that page accidentally. Okay. And I realized this later, a week later. Oh my gosh, I was deleting a bunch of pages. I was doing some housekeeping and I deleted a page. What you can do is, in your course, go home, slash, and type in undelete. And what you see here is a list of material from this course that's been deleted. And you can see some of this is actually quite old, from almost a month ago. If I want to bring that brain page back, I simply hit restore. And now that page is back in my course. In the state that it was in. Let's just check really quickly to see if the revision history is still there as well. It looks like the revision history may have been lost in that process, so it's really just showing the most recent version of it. So I guess that's the one sad tuba about restoring from deleted document, is that you do lose the revision history. All right, now really quickly, what I want to show you is a feature called, let's see here, as the case may be. What I wanted to talk to you about was a couple of upcoming things inside of Canvas that's sort of part of the new AI initiative that's happening with. But what's disturbing me a little bit is that the discussion summary feature, which is something I was really kind of excited about, is not showing up, and I'm not sure why.
Daniel, you want me to post something in that discussion
Yeah,
so
but
that
yeah,
it creates something to summarize?
let me jump over to maybe one of our OTCDs and see if 'cause there's not active discussions in there. And week 3 discussion. Yeah, this is okay. There we go. So in this particular, as an instructor, what's really cool, I think, about the discussion summary feature is that um, what you can do now is, rather than necessarily having to go through and read every um, reply within a discussion, which you should, but maybe you have some questions about the character, the nature of the discussion, and being able to use a tool like this, which is Open Summary, what it allows you to do is you can prompt it and ask questions. So um, what was the most common uh, learning object referenced in this discussion? Now, in this particular case, it says that it was interactive games and quizzes such as Kahoot and Jeopardy, and gives a little more information about it. Just like, and this is really using the idea of a prompt. Um, Now, what's happening here is if I was the subject matter expert, which is to say the person leading this course who had some idea already of why I was posting this discussion and what I was seeking, clearly this particular prompt would be much more incisive and thoughtful than just give me what the most common references were in this. And to that end, that prompt can be more sophisticated. It can also have iterations. So you have this initial prompt and discussion compared to others. Compared to others. Let's see if it can be smart that way. All right. And now it actually, I thought it was actually pretty smart. It really wanted me to contrast that with other learning objects as opposed to other discussions. So it's a case of semantics, right? If I'd been clearer in my question, it inferred actually something smarter, which is it assumed I was talking about that particular discussion rather than other discussions. All right. So discussion summary is a pretty cool thing here. The other one is smart search. Oh, and incidentally, the discussion summary is only available to you as an instructor. Your students don't have that uh, particular tool available to them. So they do have to go through and read every post to be fully participating. All right. Now, Smart Search is another feature which is pretty nice, and this is available to students as well. And let's see what we can do here. And this, what the Smart Search essentially does is it crawls and scrubs through your course, has some familiarity with the course content insofar as if you ask a question, it's going to do its best to line up and respond to your question based on what it knows about the information that's in your course. Could you tell me which discussion, oh, which resources in the course cover the topic of discussion? Again, improvising there. Let's see what it does. So now what it's doing is it's going through and it's doing its best to find information. Now in this particular case, it looks kind of dumb, right? It's just really, it looks like it's looking for course syllabus. Oh, that's actually, it does contain information. But it's pulling out this information that way. Anything that's referencing discussions. Now, I suspect this particular tool is going to get smarter over time. And again, I'm sort of improvising a bit on what I'm asking it to do, probably a little bit on the broad side. But I think this is a really good indication of what's coming down the road from folks like Canvas, where you're going to be able to students are going to be able to sort of dive in a bit deeper in their course to get information they need. I'm sure all of us had experience where you've put information into the course and a student will swear up and down they couldn't find it, they didn't see it. And this gives students another way of being able to search for your course to find information they need from it. Now, other tools that are coming in, I can't really at this point demonstrate it, but it's certainly under consideration, is being able to actually, for you as an instructor, to be able to start doing very deep sort of SQL style queries into your course. That will be quite exciting if and when it comes along. It's something that was demonstrated this summer in InstructureCon, but we're hoping to see something along those lines. I'm going to stop there because we're just about at time. Laura, do you want to talk about a little bit, if we have a moment, about the comment library, or maybe we should just take questions from the audience?
We'll leave it up to the audience. I mean, or attendees, whatever else you'd like to see or ask about. I know we went through a lot today and it's very overwhelming. Maybe we need a part 2 of this workshop. Are there any questions? And Daniel, if you wouldn't mind forwarding
Sure.
to the feedback slide. So for any of you that we would appreciate it if you would complete the survey at the end, letting us know what topics are what tasks related to Canvas time savers you'd like to hear about also. Otherwise, we'll take questions and demo anything else you'd like to see.
I really look forward to the discussion on the gradebook comment library, so that if I create a certain comment related to how students responded to a certain post on some disease versus the other 4 that they could have chosen from, that I could pull out that response and then modify it myself as needed for that student. But the general format, I would have it in a library. That's my understanding, is what you're indicating might be available. Okay, I look forward to that.
Why don't I just so quickly share my screen for those of you that want to take a quick peek? Well, it'll only take a minute, but it is honestly one of my favorite features in Canvas, so I think it's worth our time. And sorry here, I wish it was in every LMS, quite frankly. It is not. It's not the one that it's not the one that I use to teach. So let me just show you really quickly. Let me know if you can see this speed grader view on my end. Yes, so the comment library is a super handy tool that allows you to store and reuse and add recurring feedback, or feedback that you find yourself frequently giving to students when you grade their assignment. It's not terribly obvious, but it can be accessed via this little dialogue icon when you're in your speed grader. And the beautiful thing about this is not only can you add to a comment library and maintain it, it rolls over from course to course so that you can always access it. Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just unique to each user, right? So you can continually pull from it once you've added to it. Great. So you can see I've added some, maybe you say something about your replies showing, thoughtful and including good discussions for their peers. You can simply just click on that comment in your comment library. It pops it in the assignment comment. And then if you're happy with it, you just click submit and you are good to go. But you can, modify it based upon if you want to personalize it, which of course is something we all like to do. You can do that and then click submit. But it saves you a lot of time having to copy and also think of the types of feedback that you're likely to reuse time and time again when grading a specific assignment in a course or from term to term. And you keep adding to it. Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
I was busy writing, so I might find things. So we populate what those individual comments are, or it's auto-populating from what we already entered for other students?
Populate it yourself. It says unique to you as a user. I say I want to use this very terrible comment here. This is great. I just type it into the comment library text box, add to library, and it continues to remain in my personal comment library for reuse indefinitely.
I have to say, this is my happiest moment.
I am delighted to hear that because I think this is a really great underutilized feature that, again, is a true time saver.
I've had to do that. You know, I keep all my comments on a separate Word document, but it is difficult to navigate back and forth, back and forth.
Yes, and that's what I do in a course that I teach that doesn't have a common library. So I really wish it had this feature. Yeah, but this is one of my favorite things. So I hope you'll all find it useful as you grade, because we know how time consuming grading is or can be.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
That's it for me.
Okay, great. I look, there's a couple of things in the chat. Okay, wonderful. I'm so glad you guys find that, or you all found that helpful. Yes, you're absolutely welcome. It is 2:04 and we don't want to keep you any longer. We thank you so much for attending. Please, again, take a moment if you don't mind and respond so that we know what other types of Canvas time savers and other types of time savers you're interested in learning more about. Or just reach out to us at the city email, and we're happy to help with any and more.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.